Well, welcome back. Joining us in the studio this week, we're delighted to have Dr. R.J. Rockefeller from the Anne Arundel Community College. Rocky, how's it going today?
Fairly well.
Great. We want to give our viewers out there a little background of what it is you do. Tell us about the classes you teach at AACC.
I teach quite a range of history classes in political science, early and late American, early and late what used to be called Western civilization, political science, and also Maryland history when I get a chance.
Very nice. And tell us a bit about your doctorate, where you went to school, what you studied.
Sure. When I decided to go back to school after some retail management, I decided I wanted to study early American history and chose William and Mary.
William and Mary.
Oh, now you know the secret handshake.
Did it.
I then came up to Maryland, which was a very fine institution for early American history, took my PhD there.
Very good.
Terps, go Terps.
Go Terps. We always talk about PALs.
Love Terps.
University of Maryland. So
Yeah.
we're big University of Maryland fans on the show. So this month, of course, we have two birthdays of two of our greatest presidents, Washington and Lincoln. And tell us about a book that you would recommend for each for viewers out there to read.
Well, remember how big a geek I am. And I'm also a traditionalist. And Douglas Southhold Freeman wrote a 7-volume biography of Washington that has not been exceeded.
Wow.
Seven
Seven
volumes.
volumes. Better
But
get
if you
started.
don't have time for 7 volumes, Flexner recently...
What's it called?
George Washington.
It's called George Washington, okay.
In 7 volumes.
Freeman is the author, okay.
Right. And more recently, James Flexner wrote a much more digestible, The Indispensable Man. And although biography is often condemned in the modern world, and we try not to look at the individuals as well as much as we do trends, Washington is one of those individuals you have to pay attention to.
That's right.
And Flexner remembers that.
That's right.
And then Lincoln.
Lincoln is an extremely controversial character now. Lots of people condemning him routinely, but I think Stephen Oates' book, With Malice Towards None, is probably the best. Although the bestseller right now, I think, is James McPherson's Abraham Lincoln.
And not the vampire.
No, I was going to ask about the vampire, too.
He rolls his eye.
No,
I
it's
keep
not
telling my
historically
students that when they
accurate.
read graphic novels, it doesn't count.
Doesn't count. And you know, I think it's becoming more and more popular, especially folks that have a lengthy commute to do the books on tape or get an audio version of the book. So
Right.
that could make that 7-volume a little more digestible if maybe
Right.
you listen to it when you have time on the go.
I'm going to check it out.
There you go.
I'm gonna
Definitely worth it.
I finished 1776 finally, so it would be good for me to move to that. Is it hard to read? Is it like
Oh no,
Old English kind of deal?
it's
Okay.
the kind of storytelling that is very rarely done in history.
I'm on it. Tell us, here's a tricky one for you. Did George Washington and or Abraham Lincoln have any Anne Arundel County connections?
Absolutely, that's how important we are here. For Washington, it's the most obvious case. Congress was meeting in Annapolis. It was wandering around since the British had nearly destroyed Philadelphia. We hadn't retaken New York yet, and Congress was fairly migratory. They came to Annapolis, which they thought was going to be able to host them. People like Jefferson condemned it as a rotten town, and everybody hated the summer, but at least they were meeting in the winter
Well,
when he
on
came.
Thursday night, it's ladies' night, so.
I'm not sure that Washington would have taken up that, but he was quite a dancer on campus. The Congress was meeting, and he came after the military phase of the war had ended, and he came and did a quite remarkable thing. Although his own officers had pressed for him to take over the government to do things like pay them, he read to them a very moving commentary that that's not why they fought. And he came and gave back his commission and resigned from the army here in Annapolis, returning power to the civilians when he could have very easily made himself a virtual king. That story makes him known as the American Cincinnatus, from the story of the Roman Republic, where the man who was dictator over Rome went back to his farm rather than keep the power. And that was an amazing effort on the part of a heroic man.
And what year was that he resigned his commission?
83.
1783, okay.
Very
I was gonna say
admirable.
82, I really was. Okay, and how about Lincoln?
Lincoln is most known in Maryland for a couple of things like the flight of his assassins or the supposed business about sneaking at night through Baltimore disguised as a woman. Yeah, Lincoln.
Did you hear that one?
Of course, in Baltimore.
Of
Yeah.
course, in Baltimore. Yeah.
It was the original Hun.
That's what it was.
That didn't happen.
Didn't actually happen that
Okay,
way.
okay.
It's a lot of anti-Lincoln propaganda. But Lincoln had very, very close ties with the Maryland government at the beginning of the Civil War. the usual belief is that Maryland would have seceded had he not sent the troops. That's not entirely true. There weren't enough votes in the Assembly to even call for the convention. But he did deploy troops both in Baltimore and Annapolis. And in Annapolis, they were under the command of the man eventually known as Beast Butler.
Beast Butler.
Yes.
How do you get that name?
Well,
Sounds
he
like Mad
mistreated
Dog.
several of the southern communities over which he was placed in command. In Annapolis, he took over the railroads to secure them for the movement of Union troops. Well, obviously the railroad owners weren't very pleased with that, and neither was Governor Hicks. Governor Hicks took several trips to Washington to meet with Lincoln about the deployment of troops in Annapolis, which was both to suppress potentially pro-Confederate crowds, but also to secure the communication system and protect what became a major supply depot, the Academy.
Wow.
So Lincoln was very much aware of what was going on in Maryland and very much attuned to what was happening in Annapolis itself.
Can you imagine how different it would be if that train route still existed to Annapolis? I think about that often. I mean, the Lowe's Hotel was a train station, right?
Indeed.
We were pretty close by there. Do we know why the railroad went away? No? I think we should bring it back.
When I first moved to Maryland, I was hoping the light rail would be in the space between the routes east and west on 50.
Yeah.
But then another lane, and now there was no hope for mass transit.
Yeah.
The Capitol Corridor is closed unless you're in a car.
But it would have been easy. Do you think Lincoln would have traveled by train from D.C. to Annapolis? Or?
Well, being Lincoln and being in D.C., the governor had to come
Come
to
to
him.
him.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah. You were featured in the documentary about Anne Arundel. Can you
Yes.
tell us a bit about that experience and more about the documentary?
It is a wonderful idea that mass media can apply simple lessons to the public for consumption, like your county's named after whom? And to make people aware of the great heritage of Maryland. So I was very fortunate to be asked to participate in a biographical, but also a time sketch. Not only that particular woman, but what was a noble woman's life like at the time that Maryland was founded. A great library environment and a great product, and I hope everybody gets a chance to see that.
Yeah, I have often told Dave about whenever we reference this documentary that in grade school we had a unit on it, but you often forget that kind of knowledge over time. So I think this is a perfect way for adults to regain some knowledge about, yes, who our county is named after. And as we mentioned off camera, it's going to be a great piece for in school as well. So,
And more to come.
yeah, more to come.
Rocky's going to collaborate with us on some other projects.
I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, we have a lot to do, so that would be great.
Well, we had one more thing for you. If people watch the documentary, they may recognize the background that we're interviewing you in, the Truxell Library at the community college. If someone wants to learn about Washington and Lincoln, or they want to research history, is that a good place to go to get that information?
It's an excellent place. We are blessed in this county with a very good public library system as well, but they're very much in tune of what is in demand right now, what was published this year, and they cleanse their shelves on a routine basis for good reasons. So if you're looking for something a little older, or you're looking for a volume on a subject, that is to say more than one volume, then the community college library is wonderful. It's recently been renovated, it's easy access, it is available to the public both for visits and, if you make the special arrangements, as a circulating library as well. It is a fabulous institution, it serves the students very well, and this community, it also has a very strong Maryland local history collection.
Excellent.
And all 8 volumes of George Washington?
7.
By Freeman?
7, but yes.
7. All 7. There's an 8th one I heard.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
only available at the Anne Arundel County
It's a mystery where
Community
it
College
is
Library.
exactly.
Well,
Right.
technically there is an 8th volume.
See?
Oh,
See?
It's the bibliography, and should that count?
And
I suggest reading the
bibliography is like
footnotes,
this.
but
well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. What are some of the classes you're teaching this semester?
I do a lot of U.S. history. I do it
US
early and
history.
late, but I'm also teaching a political science class, and this year makes that very exciting and
Oh,
controversial.
yeah. Oh,
We'll have to audit
good
that
luck
one.
to you, sir.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and please come back on the show anytime you have some interesting lessons to give us. Dave and I can always use the
For
extra
sure.
history buff
Love
around
talking
here.
history.
So very much so.
Be happy
Thank
to
you.
help.
And
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more Week in Review right after this. Don't go anywhere.